Hello there. I am 37 years old and I was recently diagnosed with autism or autism spectrum disorder at the age of 37. And this is my story about being diagnosed and my general experience of autism throughout my life. So, this video will be in sections to sort of make it a bit more structured. And I also have some notes here just in case I need them. But the first section that we will start with is childhood. Childhood was difficult and confusing. I remember just being in primary school and being very thoughtful about what I should say to this person, how do I approach them, just practicing actual conversations in my mind before approaching someone. And I just remember looking at the other kids and it seemed so easy and so natural. They would just go up to someone, start speaking, and then they would go and play and just have fun and be laughing. And I always felt like a bit of an alien in that sense. It didn't come easy to me in that way. And even with all of that rehearsing beforehand and all of that thinking and trying to figure out what I should say, it usually just went wrong anyway. It usually didn't go well. So I would sort of approach them with something that I was interested in, and the kids would be like, okay, I'm not really into that. And then they would go and do their own thing. So straight away, I just felt very much like an outsider, and I felt like it was just very natural to everyone else. And it was like they were taught one day, and I just wasn't in school that day. It felt like that. I just had no idea what I was doing. And the other thing is sensory difficulties, which, of course, I've had all my life, but I never recognized them as sensory difficulties because they were just never explained to me in that way. And it was something that I thought everyone experienced. For example, I remember being in the reading corner a lot in primary school. It was sort of this darker area. It was a corner with books, and it was the darkest place in the nursery. And all the other kids would be playing, and I would be there because it was darker and it was quieter, and I could read. I loved to read. I was reading a lot when I was a kid. So straight away, I had light sensitivity and sound sensitivity without realizing. I just knew that, oh, it's very noisy over there with all those kids. I don't quite have the energy for that, and it's very tiring, and it's not for me. So I had that very early on, but I didn't really have a word for it. I didn't realize that's what it was. I'm a lot more sound sensitive than I am light sensitive, for sure. So, I mean, that's basically young childhood. I was not mixing with the other kids well at all, so I didn't have any friends. I found socializing very difficult. I had some sensory difficulties. So those were the main things that I noticed in childhood that were quite confusing to me. The next section is burnouts. I've had several burnouts in my life. The first one was age 16 to 17. It's a long story, but I was very unwell. And I had to take, I had cancer when I was 16, and I had to take my GCSE exams whilst having chemotherapy, which is a lot. And I didn't do well in my exams, and I was just shattered. I was exhausted, and school was very, very stressful. So it was just a whirlwind time. I was very happy to be leaving school, but I was also very physically unwell, and I messed up all my exams because I couldn't do them because I was ill. So from 16 to, did I say 16 to 17? No, it was like 16 to 18, 2 years. I just couldn't function, and I didn't really understand what was happening. I just knew that I was very tired. I couldn't do the basic things that everyone else was doing. I couldn't really motivate myself to do things, even the things that I enjoyed. I just sort of struggled and did random, just terrible jobs that didn't pay anything, and it was a waste of time. It was just pointless, completely pointless. So that was burnout number one. I had another burnout when I was 24. Basically, we were all made redundant, and I had some difficult personal things happening at the time as well. So I lost my job that I'd been at for 5 years, which is the longest job I've ever had. And I think the only reason I had the jobs that long was because it was a 0 hours contract job, which is a terrible contract, but it means you can sort of work for a few months and then you don't work for a few months. And that not working for a few months really helped me to recover. So I was made redundant. Everyone was made redundant. I lost my job. Very stressed, and that lasted for 3 years. Again, I just couldn't do anything. I was just in my room. I couldn't really take care of myself. I couldn't motivate myself to do anything, to go out, to see anyone. I couldn't even play games, really, which is like a love of mine. I would just be in my room. I don't even know, to be honest. I was there for 3 years, and I don't even know what I did. I just couldn't function. I really couldn't function. I couldn't do basic things to take care of myself. I couldn't go anywhere. It was a mess. And then the third burnout, which I think I'm still in, to be honest, was in 2019. Again, I was very unwell and I lost my job. These things seem to go hand in hand with me for some reason. I'm not sure why. I seem to be unwell and lose my job. It's just a thing that happens. I don't really enjoy much. I can't. I'm very, very sensitive in terms of sensory things still. Very sound sensitive. I have my headphones on a lot of the time. Yeah, so I've had many, many burnouts. These things I also didn't understand because I didn't think I was autistic. I just thought I was weak or broken or defective. I just thought something was wrong with me, and I just didn't know what it was because I kept burning out for all of these years and I couldn't really recover from them, and I didn't understand why. Next section is the turning point. So, I had a moment in 2012. This was during a burnout phase that I had. I remember I contacted my GP and I spoke to my GP, and he said, "Okay, it sounds like depression," and he gave me antidepressants, which did nothing, of course. But I remember just saying to him, like, I really appreciate the help, but I feel like there's just more to it than just depression. There's more to it than that. I struggle so much more than anyone I know. And I've just had these crazy periods of years. I've lost years and years of my life to these times of burnout. And I don't understand why other people get over it and they pick themselves up in like a week or two or like a very short time frame. And for me, it's years. And he basically just said, "No, you're depressed. That's it." So they didn't investigate any further. So that was a waste of time because antidepressants didn't work. But in 2018, I got my first software developer job. This was after going to university. And I had an autistic colleague, and I won't say his name, but he helped me so much. He helped me more than he'll ever know. But this was the real turning point. Because speaking to him, I could relate to him so, so much. And he also made me realize other things about myself that I didn't realize I was doing. For example, stimming. I've stimmed from as far back as I can remember. And I always had this feeling that I need to hide it, that this is something that people will judge you for. I think a few people picked up on it briefly because I do this a lot with my hands. So there was a few points along the way where someone noticed, but not really. I hid it quite well, I think. I masked it quite well. So he introduced the idea of stims to me, and I was like, "But I do that. Like, doesn't everyone do that?" And he was very, very honest. Nope, not everyone does that. Everyone has little stims, like biting their nails or playing with their hair, and that sort of thing, but not to the level that autistic people do. So that was very eye-opening. The other thing that I felt I could relate to him about and what I could speak to him about was the sensory issues, because that office was so bright and so loud, and people would just, I would be working, sitting here, and people would just walk past 1 feet away from me and then just stand here with someone and have a conversation. And I'm like, do you mind? Like, I'm trying to, like, you've completely thrown off my entire concentration and you're just standing there having a chat, like, can you go somewhere else? And he really resonated with that, and I spoke to him about that a lot, actually. I was like, it's so noisy and bright in here. He's like, yes, I totally agree, and it's tiring. And I arrived to work tired. I remember he said that to me, and it was just a light bulb moment. I said, me too, because the commute is so stressful that I arrive at 9 a.m. and I'm already exhausted. So that was just the real turning point for me, was meeting my autistic colleague. And I just had the thought of, like, maybe I'm actually autistic, because a lot of this I can really relate to, and I do very similar things. And we had some shared interests, certain types of music. We just both had very intense special interests. It was just very eye-opening, and that was absolutely the turning point for me. Getting diagnosed. So in 2019, just after I lost that job, I spoke to a doctor, and I said, I think I might be autistic. I had an autistic colleague, and so many difficulties I've had in my life, it was mirrored in him. I could really relate to him and a lot of the struggles that he's had in life. And I have a lot of similar traits, and I stim, and I think I might be autistic. Can we please pursue this? And this was the worst doctor I've ever encountered in my life. Just awful. He basically just said, I don't remember his exact words, but it was something like, we don't have the resources for this. We are not investigating this further. Just like that. So I gave up pretty quickly. I said, fine, okay, whatever. So I called another doctor, and they said, okay, we can pursue this, but it will be quite a few years, because this was also as COVID happened. So a lot more people were looking for assessments and that sort of thing in the healthcare system. He said, sure, it will take some years. I said, that's fine. Just please put me on the waiting list. That's fine. Years later, long time later, I called them a few times, and I said, I'm still waiting. And they said, yeah, that's fine. Turns out they just didn't put me on any list. They just failed to, or they did something wrong, or they lied, or I don't know what happened. I wasn't on the list for that whole time. So 2024, I was actually put on a proper list. But by this time in the UK, we had something called right to choose. So we could be referred somewhere else. And I was referred to somewhere called Psychiatry UK. It was about a 6-month wait in the end. It really wasn't too bad. The assessment. The doctor was really, really good. He was very understanding, and he was good at calming me down and saying, if you have anything that you'd like to ask, like, it's fine. I understand that this is a very stressful experience. Please let me know if anything is too much. We can go as slowly as you like. There's no rush. And he was just very good at what he did, actually. He was very good. Before this assessment, though, they had sent so many forms. They were very in-depth, and there was a lot of forms. And I really took my time with this to make sure that they had all the information that I could possibly provide. And these were all very in-depth. They took me a long time to fill in, and they were very tiring, and I was exhausted afterwards. But having said that, the assessment was only about an hour long, and I think that's because they had so much information from the forms. They had, to be honest, I feel like they had already made their minds up from the forms, because there was so much that they asked of you. And I think the assessment was just to confirm some things, or reiterate, or to clear up any inconsistencies or things they weren't sure about. So I sort of think they'd made their mind up already, to be honest. The actual assessment was a lot of questions that they'd already asked in the forms. A lot of how was school, how have your friendships been in your life, how have your relationships been, how's your work life been, sensory issues, do you have any special interests, executive dysfunction. And while this was happening, they wanted to see my entire upper body, which now I realize, well, at the end of the assessment, he told me it was to see what I'm doing with my hands, like stimming. And I was just doing this the whole time. I was stimming the whole time. I didn't realize. But it was about an hour. And at the end of it, he explained everything that he'd asked and everything that he'd noticed about me. And he just said, I'm confident that you qualify for autism spectrum disorder. And I didn't break down, but I did cry. I think I was a bit of a mess for about a minute, and he was very understanding. He's like, I understand it's a lot to take in. So don't, don't feel embarrassed or anything. It's totally fine. And they gave me a lot of resources that I can use after my diagnosis. So things like forums, lots of books, ways that you can help to manage your own burnout, um, things like I can't remember what it's called. Psychoanalysis doesn't sound right, but being assessed by my GP often, basically. See how I'm doing mentally, how I'm doing physically, how it feels now. The date is August the 2nd. I was diagnosed on July the 3rd, so tomorrow it will be a month since I was diagnosed. Well, I've had a month to sort of think about it, and I'm not sure that I've really progressed in any way in terms of how I'm feeling. I'm feeling incredibly relieved, so relieved. There is some sort of answer to all of these difficulties that I've had in life that other people don't seem to have. And the way that I have special interests, and they're very intense and they're very important to me. So I feel a big sense of relief. There's finally an answer, and I can be easier on myself, because I used to think a lot like, oh, you can't recover from this because you're just a weak person, you're broken, you're just a bad person, and everyone else recovers from this and they're fine, and you can't because you're terrible. I just remember thinking things like that, and I can be a lot easier on myself now because I have these tools and this realization that actually it's not me. I'm not a bad or terrible person. It's that my mind just works differently, and there's a reason for that, and I don't have to blame myself personally because it's not my fault. I'm also, I wouldn't say angry, but I mean, angry's fine, I suppose. It's a bit less than angry, but I'm just disappointed, really, that no one recognized this earlier. And my entire life could have been so different if I had had help along the way. I feel like it would have changed my whole trajectory, and maybe I'd still have a career, and I could have had some more stability and been further along in life if I would have had help along the way. So I'm very disappointed in that way. I feel like at this stage, because I'm 37, it's been a lifetime of struggle and pain, which wasn't necessary. If someone would have noticed, then I would have gotten help. Or even earlier, when I asked the doctors in 2012, which is 13 years ago now, it would have been a lot of pain and suffering saved, and my quality of life could have been drastically better than it is now. But I do sort of understand at the same time how it was missed, because I am quite high masking. Like I said, I do not stim in public. I sort of squeeze my toes together a lot, actually, but that's in my shoes. You can't see that happening. So I don't visually stim in front of people. So I suppose I'm high masking, but I'm just kind of surprised because I'm so bad socially. I'm so bad. I feel like someone would have noticed along the way, because I'm just so awkward sometimes, and I can't keep conversations going at all. I don't know how people do it. Final thoughts. I also just wanted to mention something that I'd encountered while researching about autism, and that's about self-identifying. So I can only really give my own opinion on this. I think it's okay to self-identify because it can take such a long time to get an assessment. It can be very expensive in some countries too. It can take years. You can be on waiting lists forever. Or you can think you're on a waiting list and it turns out you wasn't the whole time. Who knows what will happen? There can be a lot of incompetence along the way, sadly. So I do think it's okay to self-identify, but I would say I've definitely seen this thing of people making it quirky or trendy, like on TikTok and stuff, for example. So it's fine to self-identify, but don't parade it around on social media like it's a super cool, quirky thing, because it can be incredibly debilitating and you can lose such a quality of life from it it can be horrific, to be honest. From day to day, you can struggle so much. So please don't do that. The last thing that I will speak about, I would love to say, please go and get an assessment to everyone. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. There are laws and there's real oppression actually out there for autistic people, which is insane. And I don't know what the hell's wrong with this stupid world, but that's how it is. Sometimes you have to disclose if you're autistic in the workplace, which of course can be very oppressive and lots of bad things can come from that. So there's a lot of restrictions, sadly, which is dumb, but that's how it is. So if you've reached this part of the video, I want to say a big thanks to you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you watching, and I just hope that perhaps this can be helpful for someone, perhaps someone that's in a similar situation to me that got through 37 years of life. Well, got through 37 years of life and are just starting to realize now that perhaps they might be autistic. Or perhaps this was educational for someone. I just hope that it helped in some small way. And I hope to make some more videos about my autistic journey and how I feel about the past, how I feel about the future. Thank you very much. I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you. Bye-bye.